All right, this really doesn't have to be too long. This is the post Boise State, Oregon State podcast here on the Kingdom of Pod. I watched the game along with most of us. There wasn't that many that were able to get to Corvallis because of the limited seating arrangements there. And it's just as well. There's nothing more challenging, I think, for fans who sometimes get one chance a year to travel to a big away game and get there and are disappointed by the outcome. Others are disappointed by the effort, and then there's everything in between. And so that's a challenge. And it didn't seem like there was that many there because there couldn't. The stadium's capacity was limited. But all that stuff aside, that was very frustrating. And you would have to ask yourself about your own frame of reference, I think, before we figure out if it's bothering everybody, nobody, and then who's it bothering in between. If you're an observer of Boise State football like I am for 42 years, then I am bothered, yet I understand. I've seen the ebbs and flows, the successes, and I've met a lot of the coaches and know a lot of the people that have got them where they are, and understand how that happened and what it took to get that done. And now can understand where it's at and put it into perspective and frame it from that point of view. That's how I look at it. And if you enjoy that perspective, great. Continue to listen, because that's how I look at it. And I've always tended to look at things through the eyes of coaches. And I have an ability, I think, and a habit and a pleasure in looking at things through athletic director's eyes and the business angle. That's where my interests lie. I'm as apt to be more interested in that as I am the weather and some other factors that others have interest in, television or whatever else it is. So I see all those things. But when it comes down to analyzing what I see on the field, I have the healthiest respect for the coaches. And what the coaches see doesn't lie. And that film doesn't lie. Now, I'm not suggesting that when coaches speak publicly, they lie, but increasingly they're speaking through the media to their team, or they have other agendas because of the nature of how things have changed and what people are reading into things and how they're getting information. So I try to sift through that as best I can. And we all had access to listening to all the post-game interviews after the game to see, like, Andy Avalos's perspective, or Riley Smith, or you name the player down the road that had a reaction to this. At the end of the day, this is not about Hank Bachmeier to me. It isn't about the future of the program, isn't all about Talon Green. There are many other conditions that were on display last night that are pretty concerning, really. And one of the concerns I had was I understand where Andy's coming from, and trying to put together a culture that he knows to be successful, and having guys who are committed to the team first, committed to doing things the right way first, and committed to, as he would put it, balling out, and committed to being ethical and all these other things. And that's the kind of program that he's from. That's the kind of guy he is. That's the kind of coaches he wants around him. And that's the kind of players that he's tried to get in there. And I'm not saying they don't all follow these ideals. I just think the game's changed. And the transfer portal presents an opportunity to grab some players. And if you look across FBS football, 44%, ESPN was stating 44% of starting quarterbacks are transfers from other schools now. I was surprised Boise State ended up with just the kid from Oregon State. I thought they'd chase somebody more, but I don't know whether there was nobody available to them that they could corral, or they thought that Hank Bachmeier would turn the corner, get rid of the ball sooner in the pocket, get better protection, have a healthy Helani with him, and they could go down that road. Now, did they cross their fingers and hope for that? Did they have to settle on that because they missed on some other things? We don't know those answers. But I was concerned at that point. I did not think Green was ready to lead this team to a New Year's Day 6 bowl game. And his throwing motion, if you'd have seen it in high school, has improved dramatically from where he's at today, from where he was. And I saw him here. Louisville, where he played high school, is literally 5 miles away. And I saw him play a couple of times. The offense and where Green's going to be able to go with it is going to be much different than what they could have done with Hank. And that's probably why they stuck with Hank in the offseason once they determined that's who they had. He can read the field. They can do so much more. They can use the whole field. They can use multiple personnel groups. They can attack teams based on what somebody's giving them, not based on what they can do. Without that, we're back to the days of when Boise State had injuries at quarterback and a young guy was thrown in there and you just went, they're just doing the best they can. And we all know the number of opponents that Boise State has mowed down through the years that just didn't have a quarterback that was ready or didn't have a quarterback, period. And Taylor Green isn't ready. And the rollouts, the short check down passes, playing half the field, the RPOs, the throwing motion, there's just things that are under construction. I hope he can get there. And who knows, maybe he'll get there overnight. That's not as common. He's going to have a lot thrown at him. And this could be a little different ride. As it relates to Hank Bachmeier, why did he get pulled so early? Well, why didn't he go to Las Vegas during Mountain West Media Days? Why wasn't he, as some pointed out, on the billboards facing Broadway? Why isn't he the captain? There were doubts, in my opinion. And I think Hank was well aware that he had to prove himself and put it together in clutch situations so that the team could move forward. And so if they gave a quick hook to Hank, it's because I think they were hoping Hank turned the corner. I don't think they wanted Hank to turn the corner and become this next level quarterback. The intangibles, the toughness, the attitude, the commitment to the program. Hank has so many of those qualities and the cultural things that Andy Avalos and that staff admires and wants in a football player. But what we saw on display was sort of more of the same of the valleys of Hank's performance over the last 4 years. And they couldn't take it anymore. So they had to go a different direction. And it's going to take a little different time. My caution in this situation now, should they stick with Green as they move forward, and they've got to make a decision because the game plan that they put together for Taylor Green is going to be much different than the one they put together for Hank Bachmeier. Just look at the reads they asked Green to do when he came into the game. And if he'd been training at number 2, since they knew he was the number 2 guy, then he had the exposure to all of Hank's stuff. So once he got in the game, though, they're like, oh, check downs, we got to roll him out, cut the field in half, give him some reads to build confidence and kind of get him going and all that stuff. So it could be a total. I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starter. They're going to have to change what they ask him to do. And you may see him running quite a bit more. And then Vidlak would be that other guy to come in if he got injured. And away we go. I think it will not be a walk in the park. I don't care who is playing for New Mexico. If they're coached by Rocky Long on defense, watch out because there's blood in the water. Rocky knows it. He hasn't seen Boise State in a quarterback situation like this probably since he's been playing against them. And he knows exactly how to pressure young quarterbacks trying to find their footing. So, yeah, this is a challenge. The blame for all of it, I mean, you'd have to go back probably a long ways, I think, all the way back into Harson's era and tenure to see the risk that they took at this point by having the football program run by somebody who didn't have an offensive playbook in his back pocket. That was always going to be a risk. And not that this offense can't come around. It's just a departure. The backup plan isn't necessarily within Andy's wheelhouse. It is in others. There are people that Plow can talk to, like Dirk Cutter, and run some things by him. But Dirk isn't going to take over and run this thing. That's not how it goes. This is Tim's deal. This is his offense, and he's going to figure it out. So there's some very difficult situations to work through here. And as fans, I think it's really hard. I described it as getting kicked in the nuts. You were watching in that first half, you were watching a game that brought a feeling over to me that was only similar to getting kicked in the balls. You just go, what in the world has happened to me? And what am I watching? There's no continuity. Nothing could be executed. The mistakes in the kicking game, the punting, at times in the protection for the passer, certainly in the run game. There were times they got gashed on defense up front. There were times, of course, they got beat on deeper balls. There's reasons for all that stuff. Andy did a great job explaining some of that in his post-game comments. So, yeah, they definitely have to come up and fight, per se, harder now to figure out how they can just improve as a team and put it all together. And they'll probably end up saying less and doing more. I don't think there'll be anything different that you're going to see out of them in the next 4 days in their press conferences and all that. But that's really, to me, what I saw is, I don't know how much confidence they had really in Hank. I don't know how much confidence any of us really had based on some of the big moments that had not gone his way, but they sure seemed hopeful. I'm surprised he didn't go out and get a different quarterback in the transfer portal. And now they're just going to have to make the best of what they can. If they are going to go to green, you're going to see a different offense. Let me know what you think. Put them in the content, the questions. Give me an email, jeffcaves54@gmail.com. Love to talk about this. Very difficult situation, but I think they'll believe in themselves, and that's who they have to count on, and that's what they'll have to do moving forward.